Today, your family will discover more about God's creation of marriage and sexuality. I am very excited for you and your family, as I hope that what you will learn about today will become the basis for many, many more great conversations as your children grow and mature. There is a lot of confusion these days about healthy sexuality. Genesis 2 teaches us that God made sex at the same time He made marriage, and that they belong together if they are to be the blessing God intended that they be. As a brief overview to Genesis 2, while Genesis 1 provides a detailed account of all 6 days of creation, Genesis 2 zooms in on day 6 specifically to describe in more detail the events of that day. We begin by learning about how God created man and placed him in a garden with 2 trees. The tree of life was meant to prolong his life indefinitely, while the tree of the knowledge of good and evil would result in man's death if he ate from it. This is a great opportunity for you to teach that God designed rules. Though some people see rules as restrictions to freedom, parents know that rules provide children with freedom. Freedom to know where the boundaries are for their safety, and freedom to grow and flourish in the most optimal way. God's rules exist to show us that God is holy, and that when we follow His rules, we live holy like Him. When we live holy lives as God wants us to, then we flourish as humans and appreciate His holiness more. Likewise, when we go against God's rules, we suffer the natural consequences of pain and death, and we appreciate His holiness less. Up until now, after every act of creation in Genesis 1, God declared, "It is good." Suddenly, in Genesis 2, 18-20, God interrupts this pattern with the statement, "It is not good that man be alone." God did not intend man to be independent and solitary. God created man to need help, so He says, "I will make a helper suitable for Adam." He put Adam to sleep, removed a part of his side, and fashioned the woman out of it. When Adam awakened, God brought Eve to him and presented her in a similar way to how a father presents his daughter to the groom on her wedding day at the altar. At this point, Adam realized that Eve has been created from his own flesh, so he names her woman, which literally means from man. Then God makes this great pronouncement which defines the meaning of sex and marriage forever. He says, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." Marriage and sexuality were designed by God to display the unity and completeness of two becoming one. This is what the Bible means by one flesh. So this is why all sexual practices outside of monogamous marriages are condemned in the Bible, because they do not show that proper picture of completeness between a man and a woman that God intended when He created us. We learned at the beginning of this chapter that God created rules and shows us how to live holy lives. And now we see that keeping sex inside marriage between a husband and a wife is a rule He created to help humanity live holy lives. Anytime we try to do sex or marriage outside of God's design, it will result in pain and misery and a diminished view of God's holiness. Day 3, we will explore this theme in a bit more detail as we read Genesis 3, but the last point Genesis 2 makes to us is that Adam and Eve were both naked and unashamed. God created us to have a healthy view of our bodies, and not to feel any shame over our sexual body parts. As you teach your children about God's creation of the reproductive system, I encourage you to do so confidently, using proper anatomical names stating that God made their bodies, and that everything God makes is good. God bless you and your family as you grow closer to Him and to one another.